morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Board of Commissioners meeting for December 2nd. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone parking for this meeting or using the bus can pick up passes on their way out the door, and it will be valid for today only. Ethics reminder to the board. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable impact for any board member? Also, does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before this board today? There being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote this evening. Thank you. All right, we move to our consent agenda. Does anyone from the public have questions or comments about our consent agenda this evening? We do need a motion to add 2 items from our 3 p.m. briefing to this evening's consent agenda. And the first is the Hazard Mitigation Plan addendum, and also the Reduce to Rebuild ordinance to amend fees effective January 1.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to amend the consent agenda to include the Hazard Mitigation Grant Plan addendum and the second as stated.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will move forward with this evening's meeting as presented. And we do come to public comment. The time limit for individual comment to the board is 3 minutes. Please state your name before speaking. If your time expires, you may leave any question along with your name, address, and phone number with the clerk to the board. Board members are not expected to comment on any matters during public comment. This is your time to speak to us. All public comments must be directed to the Board of Commissioners as a whole, not to individual commissioners, staff, or audience members. There is no clapping, snapping, or booing allowed. The board reserves the right to deny public address on any subject previously presented to the board during the same meeting. Please note, a group can elect one person to speak for 10 minutes if 8 people in attendance relinquish their right to speak on the issue. Yes, Mr. Euler.
Chair Edwards, before moving forward with public comment, I just want to be sure that we approve the consent agenda. While I believe that there was a motion to add 2 items to the consent agenda, I am not 100% sure that there was a motion to adopt the consent agenda as.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure that we're clear on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Kurt. All right, so we had a motion to amend to add those 2 items. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda presented with the additions?
I move we approve the consent agenda with the additions.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping us in line. All right, we'll go ahead and move to our first speaker, Christopher Fink. And you'll join us at the podium there.
Good evening. I'm coming to you this evening as one of your appointed representatives to Buncombe County's Health and Human Services Volunteer Ombudsman Group. We serve at Land of Sky and supervise the county's 50-some-odd adult care homes. In addition, I'm also a member of Venture Asheville, where I serve as a small business mentor and part of the Asheville Angels Group. So I'm presenting an issue to you tonight that touches on both of these aspects of community health and small business viability. Hidden in plain sight from a good number of us, in Buncombe County we have 13 small businesses who operate 46 residential living facilities. Those facilities house 387 individuals. They're licensed at full capacity with 387. Many of those individuals are living in recovery with chronic mental health issues. Our North Carolina agencies have been waiting for the impact on public health funding of the One Big Beautiful Bill. And starting in October, OB3 has prompted cuts to North Carolina Medicaid. locally for these housing operators, 8% cuts in housing reimbursements, 8% cuts in personal care services, 3% cuts in transportation, and those are the cuts that we know of so far. Meanwhile, our 13 small business housing operators are struggling with cost inflation. Since Helene, whether it's staffing, utilities, insurance, or food, they've experienced double-digit increases in their operating expenses while reimbursements have gone down. Combine these costs and cuts and cost increases are threatening the viability of these small business operators and thus the housing security for the 387 individuals. Quietly, a couple of weeks ago, RHA Health Services announced the closure of the Riverview Group Home in West Asheville. This is quite a unique property. It's Buncombe County's only 5600A licensed property to function as a transitional living facility. Think of it as the final step in the journey for individuals seeking to regain their independence. With Riverview's home closing, 6 beds would be lost. Now, the Riverview Group Home closing is essentially the tip of the iceberg, and that's why I'm here this evening. The 13 county small businesses who operate residential housing are warning us of Medicaid resident evictions due to property consolidations and closures, as their businesses are simply not viable. Very good. Thank you.
Corey Wall.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for your time and everything you guys do for our county. We truly appreciate it, especially after the year we had. I am Corey Wall, and I am here to talk about the Fairview Holiday Parade. I have been working tirelessly to get this completed so that we can close the road, and with y'all's help, we did get the ordinance to close US 74A to be in the heart of Fairview. I think you all know with Hurricane Helene, we did it at Reynolds High School, but the community was just upset that it was not in Fairview, so we decided to move forward with that. What I just wanted to share what I've already put in place. I have met with the Sheriff's Office multiple times, and we now have a clear and direct open line of communication. We are aligned on road closures, staffing, and safety procedures. I have personally walked and talked to all the businesses along the road closure area. I have hired a licensed engineer to help with the traffic management plan. And there are a couple changes that the Sheriff's Office has asked for, and the engineer is working on that currently, and it will be sealed and in your inbox. I am ready to sign a contract with the signage people for the road closures. DOT has confirmed that the message board for the signage will be up 2 weeks before the event. What I really need is your support. I need to understand clearly what the final steps are and who I would really like one point of contact. I feel like there hasn't been documentation provided to me on what the protocol would be for this type of special event. And so I'm just asking for clear guidance and support from my local government in how to proceed. And I think you all know that this is super important to our community, especially Fairview. I know we are all super impacted through Hurricane Helene. And this is more than just a parade. It's something that what's really cool is that the unity that it's provided for the entire Fairview community. But I am planning on going beyond this. We have 33 families, businesses, churches, and I really want to, after this parade, continue to help these small businesses. and help them, because a lot of them are planning to shut their doors down because 74A has been shut down to Chimney Rock, and that's where they've gotten a lot of their business. So I just want to help get through those challenges throughout 2026. Thank you for your time.
Corey. Adrian Butter?
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for allowing me to speak for a couple of minutes here. I just wanted to speak in support of Corey and the work she's doing to put on the Fairview Christmas Parade, along with Jennifer Horton. They've been doing a great job. And, really, whatever you can do to help support this effort to get this parade through and, make it a reality, it would be just for the betterment of the community. I think, as you're all aware, after Hurricane Helene, Buncombe County, of course, had the most deaths and the most destruction of any county that got hit. And within this county, Fairview was actually the one that got hit the hardest with deaths, mudslides, flooding, all that. Just turned life upside down around here. And I know, the families who have been going through this, I mean, they've been basically living through hell to get to this point. There's so much more to be done, but this Christmas parade would be one way to bring the community together, bring families, especially with the kids, and help get them through this. So, that's all I really wanted to say. If you could, whatever you could do to get the point of contact in touch with Corey and make this a reality, it would be much appreciated. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Gino Perez.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gino, and tonight I ask that you please reconsider your plans for the redesign of our public transportation network. Right now, Asheville is moving towards a ridership model for our transit system. But with our hills and our scattered communities, adopting a ridership model will hurt the very people transit is supposed to help. This is the opinion of Jarrett Walker, the city's own transit consultant. In Human Transit, Walker writes that a ridership model depends on 4 key points: density, walkability, linearity, and proximity. Of these prerequisites, Asheville meets none. We are not dense. Our homes and businesses are spread across hills and valleys. We are not walkable. Steep grades and long distances keep people from the bus stops. We lack linearity. Our streets twist and climb so buses cannot run straight, effective routes. And we lack proximity. Many destinations sit far from the major roads that the buses can actually use. Without these conditions, a ridership-first system is destined to fail. And we know what that failure looks like. When Pierce County in Washington, an area with land and demographics like ours, switched to a ridership-first design, the consequences soon came. Within a year, their paratransit and ADA services were overwhelmed. Costs shot up, demand exploded, and people were turned away. Today, mountain mobility is already strained, picking up seniors 2 to 3 hours late. How then will mountain mobility absorb the needs of Leicester, Fairview, Arden, Swannanoa? When those transit lifelines are cut, when coverage is cut, those people do not go away. That is why Asheville needs a coverage model, service that goes where people live. The choice before you is not one between efficiency and inefficiency. It's a choice about our city's values. Above all other priorities, value our people. From there, all decisions become clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the audience who did not sign up who would like to speak during public comment? All right, thank you all. All right, we move to our manager's report. Do you have a report this evening?
No report, madam.
Okay, thank you, Manager Pender. All right, our first presentation this evening is our Early Childhood Education and Development Fund Committee Annual Report, and Vice Chair Moore is joining us to provide that update. The floor is yours.
And just to double check, Avril, Rachel did not tell me she's going to be bailing on me, so I'm going to do my best Rachel impression.
We would prefer the Martin impression.
Oh, God. You asked for that. All right.
I think she just asked you to do your own best impression of yourself.
And somehow I'm still going to fail. So as you all know and have been patient enough with me over the past few meetings, we've been really excited to talk about early childhood education development, setting the stage for this. We've done a lot of work on committee, kind of refocusing our tasks and taking inventory of where Helene left us. The past year has been extremely brutal, and I'm grateful for a committee that is unpaid, putting hard hours in to make sure we're having the important conversations and making sure we're making the highest and best use of our money. So as you can see on commission, myself, Commissioner Whitesides, and Commissioner Horton all serve on there, along with an amazing group of volunteers who have been enmeshed in policy, data. Recently, we had a successful slew of site visits across any number of child care centers. And just a reminder for our members who were not on commission at the time that this was implemented, myself included, the purpose of the Early Childhood and Development Committee was to engage with community partners, solicit public input, make sure that we're incorporating all the things that our public needs to have policy recommendations and funding recommendations for the board in support of the early childhood space within our county. So support for early care and education for children birth through kindergarten, so focus on pre-K and those early ages, as young as infant in some cases, with a few main goals. Strategies being to develop early childhood workforce, maintain and enhance the existing slots that we already have within our county, increasing the number of slots for the kiddos for enrollment, increasing the quality, so what that care looks like, everything from what the credentials are for the people who are providing this essential learning for our kids, up through their mental health, up through what classroom supports there are, supporting families as they're trying to navigate the challenges that come with making sure their kids are in the best learning centers that they can be in, and then overall enhancing the effectiveness of the system. So those systemic changes that we know are constantly changing at the state level, we're trying to implement locally. I think we're one of the few counties in our state that actually do this, and particularly proud of how we do it here. So as you can see, from fiscal year 2022, it actually started back in 2019, if I remember correctly, County Manager and Commissioner Whitesides. But going back the past couple of years just to show where we've been, where we're going, 3.7 million, 3.8, increasing every year. Unexpended funds are regranted, so that means we have a little bit of rollover some years for various reasons, ranging from a program not fully utilizing the amount that they were allocated to some places unfortunately shutting down. And that's always a very tragic moment. But I think we've been able to successfully deploy most of the funds almost every year. In the years that we have not and had a little bit of rollover, we've been able to find creative uses for those to further enhance the number of slots within our county. Right now, we have a carry forward balance of $236,797. That's from the previous years as I described. I threw a lot of numbers at you. Does anyone have any questions so far? Great. Fiscal year 2026, so this would be July as of last year, this year through June 30th. So we have a few of our grant-funded programs, including Buncombe County Schools Learning Lab, Buncombe Partnership for Children, great partner, the Irene Wortham Center, Christine Avery, all folks that have been at the table for quite some time, Verner, YWCA. And we go through a pretty rigorous process of discussing, do they meet the metrics? They're very strictly reviewed, accounted for. I want to give props to our team. They will dive into the numbers, and if there's anything that looks less than stellar, they will dive in, ask all the questions they need to make sure we're making the highest and best use of the money, and that our programs are actually doing what they say with the money. I think we've had a very good track record of holding people accountable and making sure that everyone's meeting goals and providing the appropriate paperwork. Example of the use of funds, just so you can see where that money's going. We've had apprenticeship programs, recruitment, everything from student nutrition to teacher pay, particularly in this space where pay is not as competitive at a state level as it should be. We are offsetting a lot of the expense that we think should be picked up by other parties and making sure that this is something that's viable, and we're creating a workforce of teachers that are fairly compensated so we can hang on to those folks, because we don't want to just meet this number year by year. We want to make sure that each one of our educators feels like they can have a sustainable career, and unfortunately in this space, we know that the turnover is rather high. The bills are getting harder to pay, and people don't do this work for money, but they need to be able to afford the ever-increasing cost of living here, and all the conversations that we have for our K through 12 schools are equally true, if not more so, in this space of pre-K and early childhood ed, especially the infant care. Curriculum, assessments, licensing, all of these things are funded, so there's any number of uses. We have a pretty healthy metric for what you can do with the money as long as it falls within the category of supporting something in the ballpark of the 6 parameters. I think we reduced it to 5 today of what the acceptable uses are for supporting early childhood ed. Any questions about that part? I know it's kind of nebulous, but by design. So, since forming in 2019, this committee has directed annual investments kind of on a year-by-year grant basis. So most akin to early childhood, in my experience, has been JCPC. You look at the programs that apply, you dole out the money as people meet the requirements, make sure that everyone's receiving it in a fair, equitable, and transparent way. This year, we have a little bit of a new approach. We've voted to undertake a project to redefine and implement a funding strategy that's going to be more targeted. Fixing early childhood ed is not something that any county has the capacity to do. This is a statewide, if not nationwide, problem in terms of how we fund this, how we do these things better. So deploying the resources that we have, and I'm very thankful that our county has continued to invest in this over the years, how do we make the highest and best use of the money that we allocate every single year towards this space? Our discussion was, rather than do 50 things really well, let's do a handful of them exceptionally well. Make sure we are creating a sustainable plan so we're not just having our hands in a million pots and not really moving the needle, but doing something toward either creating more slots or making sure that we have the appropriate workforce engagement. We're in the process of figuring out what those goals are. We're taking a data-driven approach. But we all came to a consensus that trying to do too many things at once just means you fail at everything. So part of our goal was aligning with our resolution to establish early childhood fund. How do we stay mission focused? What maximizes our local government's opportunity to influence those positive outcomes, responding to the current conditions, particularly post-Helene. We were severely impacted, but the entire state of North Carolina for the past year has had a record number of early childhood center closures. We're not immune from that, but I think we were insulated from some of it because of the investment that we made long-term. So we didn't get that hit as hard. I think there was only one program that initially wasn't going to close, but ultimately ended up shutting down. And we were the last place in Western North Carolina that they chose to shut down because they thought they were going to remain viable up through, I guess it was about 8 months ago now. But we have the infrastructure in place, and I think that felt good to a lot of people who were looking for signals of strength and commitment to the cause. So we embarked on this approach. Sorry, I skipped over too far. Go back. So now for this project, the past 2 meetings, we've been focusing on how do we get the data we need to figure out where the highest and best use of our money is. So what we're going to do this year is operate on a normal grant cycle. Applications are going to be due in February. We're not pulling the rug out from anyone who is expecting money this year, but kind of signaling to folks right now, here's what we're looking at, here's what we're going to be doing the next fiscal year and the years to come, in the hopes of actually having some long-term, maybe 5+ year goals for how we improve this space for the people in our community. Started with gathering and analyzing data on local needs. Some of that included our last meeting, having a group of esteemed panelists, everyone from some familiar faces, Samantha Cole, who you all might have remembered from the chamber previously, showing up and presenting on behalf of a state agency, telling us what our numbers look like. So Greg Borum, handling Western North Carolina child care from a policy and a data perspective, and incorporating not just what we're dealing with here in Buncombe, but what we're doing in the greater Western North Carolina area. And how can we improve this? Because we know that Buncombe County is going to be greatly determinative of where this space goes for all of Western North Carolina. Made a point to engage impacted populations. So that's engaging with not just the centers, but the parents, the folks who are in there telling us what they need specifically for their kiddos and making sure that that takes top priority. We're not just listening solely to providers, although they're important partners. Designing scope for new focus areas, figuring out what our focus is going to be. We've talked a lot, and Al's probably heard ad nauseum over the years about slots. We want more slots. We want more slots. We want more slots. How do you do that? We need to have a game plan for what that looks like. It's not enough to just say, let's just throw more money at it and hope for the best. What's actually going to help these centers create more spots to get the kids the education and support that they need? And then developing a multi-year funding and implementation plan. We've done annual cycles. We've toyed around with the idea of going out to 2 years in some cases, but truth be told, we need plans that last well beyond 2 years for this space if you really want to make sure that these sustainable programs are staying just that. So our goal is, if all goes well, to launch a new focused funding strategy in fiscal year 2028. So as of July 1st, 2027. So right now we have the runway for it. We're talking through what that looks like while also balancing how we implement the funds that we have right now under the old model. So to follow along with our work, you can always come to one of our meetings. We had one earlier today, 1 o'clock, right in that room over there. And you'll have an opportunity to see how the sausage is made, what it takes place on a daily basis. I think we have a really good conversation with people in our community. We have our partners show up. We have folks from BCS show up. We have people in our community who are just impacted by the childcare space and want to know what's happening. And I think it's a great place for us to learn how we do things. And we also have a couple of people who are close to commission on there, one of our great board members there, and all people from private and public sector. So highly encourage you to come. And if you don't want to, there's always Teams, excuse me. Fiscal year 2027 grant application opens January 5th, 2026. So we have all of the holiday break, but we'll be back to business as usual in the month of January. I threw a lot at you, and I know I talk fast, so I'm happy to stand here and answer questions, but mostly thankful for all the work and support that each one of you has done in supporting this, especially my colleagues on the committee with me, Commissioner Horton and Commissioner Whitesides. It has been a long, arduous process in some ways, but enjoyable every step of the way, and it's my pleasure to serve as chair of the committee.
Thank you. We appreciate the good work. Any questions?
Well, I'll say thank you very much for the presentation. I'm excited to hear that you're going to hone in there on some specific goals. In all reality, I thought the increase in the slots was one of the main goals we've been focused on. So doing that will be great. And then being able to have something where we can see some measurements and see progress or where the gaps are, like actually have some data around that would be helpful. Since most anything we have in our strategic plan is measurable, that would be really helpful to be able to see that with this as well.
And I think that's a really good point, Commissioner Wells, because we have data on various points, and I think until we got our minds wrapped around what the entire state was dealing with in terms of number of closures, it kind of became this push-pull of, is maintaining our goal or is expanding our goal? But either way, I think being able to share with people what's happening in Buncombe is not happening elsewhere in a positive way is a really definitive metric for how much this investment has spared us the workforce issues, the education issues, and honestly just the community pain of losing a safe place to take care of and educate your children.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Questions?
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much, Martin. We appreciate the report. All right, we have our FY26 quarter one financial report. Melissa Moore is joining us with more information.
Hello, Commissioners. Good evening. Tonight, I will present the first quarter and financial results for FY26. So the first quarter is July 1 through September. It represents the first 25% of our fiscal year. So I'll be presenting our major operating funds with the general fund, our solid waste fund, we'll review our capital, county capital projects, investments, and in due addition, beginning this fiscal year for our procurement. So looking at the revenue for our general fund, for the first quarter, we recognized $53 million in revenue. This represents 12.1% of the budgeted annual revenue. You think about the seasonality of the revenue, for ad valorem being our primary revenue source, over 60% of the revenue. Seasonality of that revenue will be primarily within Q2, coming in November, December, with some of it also hitting in Q3. Sales tax is also on a 3-month lag, so you're not seeing any of that reported just yet. So 12% still is in line with expectations, considering the seasonality of when we recognize our primary revenue sources. Looking at expenditures for general fund, our expenditures year-to-date for the first quarter are $90.8 million. This represents 20.7% of our budget. This is trending below where we were Q1, but it is in line with expectations. This graph here shows those expenditures broken out by function, followed by this illustration of those expenditures broken out by category. Looking at our solid waste fund, solid waste revenues for the first quarter are $3.5 million. This is just under 20% or 19.1% of the annual budget. Looking at the expenditures for your solid waste fund, expenditures are $5.1 million. This represents 27.9% of the budget. We'll see an increase within our capital outlay for the purchase of a trash compactor. Recognized in our first quarter, we also recognized some indirect cost entries in the first quarter, showing a little bit of an offset. Those weren't entered in the first quarter last year, just due to timing of that entry. Looking at our capital projects, detail for these capital projects and activity can be found in Appendix C for the supporting financial report. For your life-to-date budget for approved projects, $154.3 million. Life-to-date actuals at $63 million. And for the first quarter of this fiscal year, we have had activity and actual expenditures toward capital projects of $3.1 million. You'll see the activity broken down for that $3.1 million in the accompanying financial report. You'll see a major part of that $3.1 million hitting within our EMS West regional base, as well as some activity on 35 Woodfin renovations. Total of 17 projects make up that spend for the $3.1 million. Excuse me. For our investment update for the first quarter, looking at this table, the first three columns represent our investment pools. You'll see on the last row on that top table of the assets under management, that's how much we have deposited, recognized at the end of September. The last column of this top table, you'll see the amount of interest income that we've earned. So year to date across all funds would be $2.37 million, with a total of $234 million of assets under management. 95% of our total cash is investments, realizing a higher interest rate of return. So part of our compliance with our investment policy, the donut chart here shows the diversification of our portfolio. You'll see the largest portions of those within our investment pools. Those are still considered short-term investments as we continue to see the yield curve providing higher returns on shorter terms. The table to the right are your rate of returns, and you'll still see those exceeding 4%, 4.3% for NCAP. Since the end of September, Feds have reduced our interest rate again, so we will continue to see those rates dip below 4% going forward. We have added a procurement focus to our financial quarterly reports, with the majority of the detail being provided in the supplemental report. This slide is just to try to introduce the new section of the report. So to just summarize, where on our revenue slide for general fund, highlighting the seasonality of revenue does not hit in the first quarter. That is exact opposite for procurement. A huge portion of their activity is within the first quarter as we kick off the new fiscal year and updating our annual contracts and agreements and issuing new purchase orders. So within the first quarter, of this fiscal year, we had issued 826 contracts and purchase orders totaling 121.7 million. And the supplemental report on Appendix H, you will see a detailed list of the contracts exceeding 90,000. This is in alignment with our procurement procedures, where I used to send those to the board as a supplemental report. I have now, to increase transparency, included that in our financial report. So the detail of that is included in the financial report for all contracts over 90,000. Of this 121.7 million of total contracts in the first quarter, 110 million of those exceed 90,000, and the detail is in your report. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have
you, Melissa.
a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Couple of questions. I know on the revenue to date, I know when we adopted the budget, we did not appropriate any of the fund balance, and on the amended budget, there's about 0.6 million. Can you speak to what that is there in the amended budget?
I'm sorry, you referenced 26 million. What are you seeing the 26 million? in?
0.6 million.
Oh, points, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, that makes sense. That was in a budget amendment. Let me see if I can quickly get there in the financial report. That was brought forward after the original adoption. Give me 1 second. I do have that detail in the financial report on our budget amendment. So,
As you're looking for that, I think, Commissioner, some of that is the rollovers, for purchase order rollovers that happen
Yes.
each year. So if you want to verify
that
that.
600,000 is the carry forward amount from FY '25. Appropriation of Article 39, sales tax was also, but that doesn't look like that's included. That's a budget amendment, but that's not within the 600. Yeah, the 600,000 for the appropriation for the general fund is the carry forwards.
Okay, thank you. And then I think you said investments are down this year compared to previous year thus far. Is that correct?
When you say investments are down, are you referring to the total deposit amount under deposit, or are you referring to the amount of interest income?
The interest we're receiving, yeah, the interest that we're receiving on investments. Thought I saw somewhere that it was down some from the previous year, and it might have been when I looked in the quarterly report. I didn't make a note of where I saw it.
Yeah, our interest income, we will start seeing a decrease as the rates and the rate of return in the markets goes down.
And I'm just curious with that, so when we projected for this current year's budget, are you seeing, are we kind of in line with that, or has that dropped more than what we were expecting when we adopted the budget?
I don't know off the top of my head exactly how much we budgeted for interest income. Interest income is very volatile, and we have no control over that, so it is never best practice to maximize recurring expenditures against interest income as a revenue source.
Okay.
So
We'll take a look and come back, because I don't recall either. So let's take a look and see how we're trending.
Okay.
we typically do not put the entire amount, and we typically wager on very conservative because we can't control the markets.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
You know, a question I have, I see where we invest heavily, it looks like, in North Carolina bonds. Well, in the past, that's been great because we're one of the states that always balance our budget. But how is that going to affect us going forward now that we've gone a year without a budget, and how is the market looking at that going forward?
I don't have that crystal ball, but it's definitely something that we work with our investment advisor to continue to monitor and to ensure that we're looking for the safest, highest rate of return for our investments.
Can you speak to, I don't think it's North Carolina bonds, he might be talking about the Capital Management Trust. And we have a lot of money in the trust in the NC class. So can you speak to those pools?
Okay, yes. So the pools are going to really stay in line with correlation of your treasury, your treasury return line. So as we start seeing those your treasury bonds decrease, you will typically see long-term maturities start to increase. And so instead of keeping such a large portion in those investment pools, which would be NCCMT, which is North Carolina Capital Management Trust, NCIP, North Carolina Investment Program, and then NC Class. Those are all three different, basically they're same as cash, but they kind of high yield savings account, if you will. It served us very well, although there's an inverted yield curve, meaning your longer term maturities are not, they're like less than 2% at one point. We will continue to monitor that. We have secured some CDs just recently to try to lock in to kind of hedge against those short-term interest rates continuing to decline. And then we'll start to see it, as those long-term interest rates increase, you'll start to see a larger portion of our portfolio move over, because it hasn't been advantageous to us to do that as of yet. Does that answer your question?
Other questions?
So those North Carolina specific funds you mentioned, they're like money market accounts. They're not attached to the bond market. Is that roughly
They're
true?
like money markets
Yeah.
somewhat. So they
Yeah,
take
okay.
our pool and then they invest them in things that are approved by our state treasurer. So they've got structured amounts that those organizations have been approved for us to put public funds in.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Melissa. We have a public hearing this evening for a personnel ordinance, and Karen Marshall is with us to give us some additional information before we open that hearing. Good evening, Karen.
Good afternoon. Before we open up for the public hearing on the personnel ordinance, I'd just like to share a bit of information from the presentation that I did on the November 18th briefing. I'm going to skip to that. Again, this is just a chart of the current longevity schedule. As you can see, employees with less than 1 year are paid a flat rate of $100, then upwards to 7%, 25 years plus. Let me see some of these here. And I'm going to go ahead to the recommendations. So what we're recommending is that we discontinue longevity for new hires and rehires who start work on January 1st or after. And then, of course, those employees that are currently receiving longevity will not be impacted. We're also, in addition to proposing the language change in the personnel ordinance, proposing revisions to the following HR policies where longevity is mentioned, and that's in the separation policy, the alternate workforce policy, and the leave policy. Of course, we're requesting that the commission approve the personnel ordinance and HR policy revisions, discontinuing longevity for new hires and rehires who start work January 1st or after. And so at this time, we're going to open up for the public hearing.
Thank you, Karen. We open the public hearing this evening at 5:47. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? All right, if not, we will close the public hearing also at 5:47. All right, commissioners, are there further questions for? Yes, go
Just
ahead.
commissioners, when approaching this, if possible, could you pass the ordinance or make it, if you so are inclined to pass the ordinance, do the ordinance first and then pass a resolution making the changes to the personnel policies?
Okay.
So we would need two motions. Thank you.
So we'll do the ordinance first if there's no further conversation or discussion. Questions? All right, do we have a motion to adopt the amended ordinance?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Sloan. Thank you, Commissioner Wells. All in favor of the amended ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. And do we have a motion to adopt the revised personnel policies to discontinue longevity for new hires and rehires who start work January 1, 2026 and after?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sloan.
Second.
Commissioner Whitesides. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion also carries. Thank you all very much.
Commissioners, I'd like to briefly remind the board that a couple of years ago, we amended the personal ordinance to include a requirement that we will look at salary studies on a routine basis, at least every 5 years or no more than every 5 years. We're at that point now, so we are looking to do a salary study where we can look at all studies across the organization. And that we were planning on putting that RFP out for a third party to look at our market position. It does not guarantee a pay raise for anyone. It does guarantee that we look at our salary structure and make sure that we're compensating people equitably. So that study would go out this month. I believe today it will be posted. We will get our results back sometime in June of next year, and then we can think about implementation. But I wanted you to know that we are looking at our salary structure as well.
Thank you. We appreciate that. All right, we'll move to new business. Our first item is a resolution to terminate the commercial hauler rebate program, and Dane Peterson is joining us. Good evening, Dane.
Chair Edwards, Commissioners, good evening. My name is Dane Peterson, Buncombe County Solid Waste Director, and here this evening to request the board approve a resolution that would effectively terminate the existing solid waste hauler rebate program. So talking a little bit about the history of this program, in 2015, the then Board of Commissioners passed a budget ordinance of $4 per ton for haulers who haul greater than 23,000 tons per year to one of our county facilities. In FY18, that was adjusted to 12,000 tons per year, really to try to incorporate more haulers to be eligible to the program. And really the purpose of the program was always to incentivize haulers to bring materials that they generated through their operations to county facilities so that we could recognize that revenue in our enterprise fund in solid waste. It is an expensive program. This is a snapshot of the previous 3 years of the payments that we've sent out in the form of rebates to haulers that have qualified for the program. As you can see, roughly around $500,000 average per year in payouts, ran right around $1.5 million if you look at a 3-year window there. And it is essentially a large hauler rebate program. When you think about the 620 plus commercial contracts that are accounts that we have with businesses locally here in the county, only around 5 of those qualify each year for that rebate. So that's really less than 1% of our customers that are able to get this discount and a rebate. Some of the reasons that we feel like it's important to terminate this this rebate program include equity and neutral competition, and basically trying to level the playing field for all of our companies doing business in Buncombe County in this space. Certainly helps with the administrative process for tracking, verifying, issuing payments for rebates for staff. Ending the program restores, or we feel like helps enhance fairness in the market. We do also feel it aligns with board goals of equitable service delivery, and also feel like the repurposing of this funding that we send off via rebates this year, we could better utilize in other directions to better serve a purpose for all of Buncombe County in the solid waste services. So those are things that we certainly think about with this program. So if approved this evening, the recommended effective date would be December 31st this month of this year. I've had conversations with each of our haulers that have historically qualified for this program, and made sure that they understand that in all likelihood this was under consideration, and also make sure that they knew this calendar year that rebates would be paid, that would still be eligible. So that process, the application process will open in January. Staff will take submittals with the necessary documentation from the haulers, and we'll verify that the program criteria was met, and then rebates will be issued for calendar year 2025. But moving forward, calendar year 2026 and ongoing, there would no longer be the rebate program as we know it currently. And we will, we'll also communicate, if approved this evening, across the board with all of our 600 account holders to make sure that that information is distributed to all those businesses. And again, that's the recommendation that's before you, is terminating the commercial hauler rebate program effective December 31st and pursuant to these North Carolina general statutes. And I am happy to try to answer any question, Commissioners.
Thank you, Dane. Are there questions?
I've got one for
Go ahead, Drew.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for this, Dane. My question, could you speak to some of the programs we are putting in place or do have in place that do aim to meet these same goals?
So when we think about pricing fairness, that's something we want to make sure our services are priced the same across the board. Transfer station, landfill, where they're, you're a small scale commercial hauler, large scale. So that's really what we're getting at, is trying to remove some of the hurdles. It's an active space right now. We're seeing a lot of movement with small haulers coming to the area. And so that's encouraging. Obviously, our diversion programs, we certainly want to continue pushing those and build on to our diversion programs, such as like the inert concrete program. If you're able to separate those materials at the job site or the workplace, we're able to charge half the tip rates for those. So that's really the direction. Cardboard, no charge for that. There's recyclable programs we have for diversion that all of our haulers can benefit from and can reduce the tip fees that are charged associated with those materials. So to your point, Commissioner, we really want to drive diversion, saving money by doing the right things and sorting materials so we can get them back to recycling and commodity markets. But the fees that we charge, we want to be consistent with what we're charging each hauler.
Yeah, because I know we're starting a program that's a pilot program for compost. So that's one thing that we're doing. And I think it's just important we keep in mind that no one wants to site a new landfill, and we've got to keep our eye on the prize of reducing what we're sending in. So keeping that in mind, I just want to be sure that we're kind of keeping that goal front and center.
Commissioners, Dane was missing a lot. He didn't want to tout his own horn, but he's been pretty innovative as well with hazardous materials also being diverted. So I was whispering over here trying to send some telepathy so he can start really touting his horn. But his team does a fantastic job when it comes to the diversion, as you mentioned, Sandy, construction and demolition, things that he is diverting that helps us to save that airspace. To your point, I don't believe you will ever site another landfill in Buncombe County. We just don't have the land to do so. So protecting that airspace has been a tremendous effort that he's been leading at our landfill. And that helps when he talks about how you can save money. So this ordinance goes hand in hand with all the work that they've been doing for the past several years at the landfill. So I just want to say thanks to Dan and his team. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Go
And
ahead,
Dan,
Terry.
do you think it's fair to say that with this ordinance that it's going to benefit the small haulers, which will benefit the residents at large?
Yeah, I think it very well could, Commissioner. It's a good point. It does remove that $4 discrepancy right out of the gate for companies that are looking to compete in this market. So I think it does. It levels that out and really tries to drive, what is the service level. So, yeah, certainly could see that.
Thank you. With that, I will make a motion to adopt the resolution terminating the commercial hauler rebate program effective December 31st, 2025.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Wells made the motion, seconded by Vice Chair Moore. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Dane, thank you. And to echo County Manager Pender, we really do appreciate the hard work that you and your team are putting into preserving the space that we do have.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right, we have a resolution approving the design and engineering contract for the Grovemont landslide, and Kevin Madsen is on his way to give us a presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to present on our ECS Southeast LLC contract approval for the Grovemont landslide for mitigation and restoration. little bit of background information to start off. Countywide, our team identified 55 landslides that were impacting 2 or more properties throughout the county. 25 of those properties met our FEMA criteria for architectural and engineering funding, which was through their public assistance program as well. The other 30 did not pose an imminent threat or were not in the location identified in those 55. So just to clarify why we went from 55 down to 25. Of those 25, our initial one that we're working with is the Village of Grovemont landslide. It is impacting multiple residential properties. It has also been obligated by FEMA public assistance, so the money has already been transferred to the state for the funding for this project. Additionally, we have completed an RFQ, request for qualifications, on this landslide as well. We worked with 4 vendors and went through an internal review process. Part of that included what their team composition was, capabilities, duration, multiple different aspects were included. Our ECS contractor was the lead vendor from that list of 4. And then, of course, the community impacts for this project. One of the key elements they're looking to is do an assessment of the current risk, the hazards that are over at the landslide location, also identification of possible mitigation efforts. Anything that they can identify through the course of their evaluation to possibly reduce the risk of that community and those slides. And then, of course, one of the other elements of that contract is design and evaluation and costing. So not only will they look at possible mitigation, but what future costs may be associated with that as well. With that being said, specific to the Grovemont landslide, it's not a singular slide. It's actually 9 different landslides. So the map there highlights the different areas that are impacted for this contract. Of those 9 slides, it's documented to be roughly 12,529 feet, which equates to roughly 2.4 miles. So significant amount of landslide length from that event. Also, the width on average is 755 feet. To put that into context, the football field length is 360 feet. So we're talking on average 2 football fields wide for that landslide width. So wanted to just kind of quantify 2.4 miles in length, 2 football fields wide on the average. So significant footprint for that slide. With that being the case, it will be a complex process, but our contractor has very targeted goals within the contract as far as what they're looking for. Phase 1 of the ECS contract involves them reviewing our existing data that has been collaborated with our partners with USGS, North Carolina Emergency Management, existing LIDAR data. They'll be going through and reviewing all of that material. Also, they'll be doing their own targeted LIDAR for this landslide specifically, so not the cumulative that was completed across Western North Carolina, but a very targeted approach. Additionally, they'll be doing field reconnaissance and hazard modeling and those risk assessments to identify what currently exists in those communities. From all of that information, they will also pull geotechnical soil samples, look at the data from our current soil stabilization, and then they will build out mitigation recommendations. All of that will be included in that Phase 1 project, and once again, those projects will also include costing and design and engineering on next steps, what those may look like. I want to highlight real quick, the fee for this contract is $794,200. It is being funded solely by FEMA public assistance, so there is no cost. It's cost neutral to the county. Want to also highlight the current schedule for the contract. We're looking at roughly 41 to 43 weeks in total, which is approximately 10 months. So contract starts, let's say early 2026. We're looking at fall 2026 when the project will be completed and recommendations on mitigation efforts. You can look and see kind of the vast majority of the longer time frame is going to be on the investigations on geotechnical, and then of course the modeling for what Phase 2 may look like. So with regards to next steps, what we're looking at now is sharing the signed contract with North Carolina Emergency Management. One of the key elements with those funds already being obligated for A&E from FEMA for this project is that we will get 75% upfront once the project is signed and submitted in CEM. $794,200 is roughly $595,560 that we will get initially at the contract start before any work begins. The remaining obligated funds will be received at project completion or at contract completion. And with that being said, the contract is written in line with our reimbursement from NCEM through the FEMA Public Assistance Program. So our contract due outs will be completed when the funds are received by NCEM for that last 25%. And then, of course, contracted services, ECS will proceed with the project in early 2026. Timeline is anticipating early January based on our current process. And once again, highlighting the project completion is roughly 10 months out. So October of 26 is the anticipated timeline. Our ask today is that we have approval for the ECS Southeast LLC Design and Engineering Services for examining potential landslide hazard mitigation options in the Village of Grovemont's contract execution as conveyed in the associated resolution in your board packet. And open up for any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Kevin. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Sloan.
I've got one that I should have asked you last time I saw you, but I hadn't thought of it until now. For this type of analysis, I assume it's preferred there be some sort of landowner approval for access purposes for the geotechnical engineers to walk these sites. Is that in the works, or do we anticipate any hiccups with that at this point?
Based on the feedback we received so far, the right of entry forms, documentation for them to legally be on the properties from previous assessments, previous work at those sites has been completed, and then we'll be looking at doing new ROEs with the contractor, but no pushback that we've heard of so far on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah, the residents of Gromont that I know that live there that are impacted are very excited to see this happening and to know that the county and FEMA are taking a real interest in the long-term impacts to their neighborhood. Yes,
Just want to reiterate that this is just a study phase.
Yes,
You don't
correct.
have funding for mitigation.
Correct. They believe they are being heard as part of this, so I think that's great. If there are no further questions, do we have a motion to?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Wells. Thank you, Commissioner Whitesides. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, commissioners.
Resolution carries. Thank you, Kevin. All right, our next item, Jonathan Jones is joining us with approval of revisions to the Affordable Housing Services AHSP guidelines. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. So this evening, I'm bringing forward the revisions to the Affordable Housing Services Program. These revisions have been reviewed by the Affordable Housing Subcommittee and recommended to help clarify the Affordable Housing Service Program policy in advance of an application to be released later this month. So on the 2nd of November, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee reviewed and recommended the changes, and then this board also adopted the Helene Recovery Plan, which would add an additional change to the policy. So we'll take a look at that. To provide some highlights on the revisions that are recommended, have been recommended by the subcommittee, those are in a redline version of the policy provided in your packet, but just some of the highlights would include allowing projects to follow the Housing Authority's rent payment standard for units that would be leveraging project-based vouchers that would exceed the fair market rents published by HUD. It's a process allowed by HUD, so staff and the committee are recommending that projects be allowed to do that. There are also changes to the guidelines that limit the funding maximums for projects, better define the reimbursement process, explain eligible applicants and the allowable expenses under those funded project contracts, as well as clarification of the loan terms for construction projects. In addition to the recommendations from the subcommittee for revisions, staff also identified that there are some expenditure approval thresholds listed in the policy. which are duplicative of county policies, such as the procurement policy. And so staff are bringing forward the suggestion to remove that reference, just so that there isn't conflict with other existing county policies. This recommendation was also brought forward to the subcommittee earlier today, just to make sure that they were aware of that change. And then the final item is a revision to align with the recovery plan that was approved on November 18th. And part of that plan was to establish a down payment assistance program for low and moderate income households that were affected by Helene, specifically to provide that down payment assistance as a form of a loan for households that had been permanently displaced due to the storm. So to bring the Affordable Housing Service Program guidelines into alignment with that recovery plan, staff are recommending an additional preference in funding that would prioritize affordable housing projects for Buncombe County residents permanently displaced by the storm. So for the recommended action we have here, again, with your approval, staff would begin preparing an application to be released later this month.
Thank you, Jonathan. Commissioners, are there questions? It's very straightforward, and with no further questions, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the revisions to the county's Affordable Housing Services Program.
Second.
Commissioner Sloan, seconded by Commissioner Ball. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, revisions are approved. Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate it. Our last item of new business is the approval of our FY25 external audit contract amendment, and Melissa Moore is.
That is the one we asked to removed?
That is, thank you. I apologize for that. That is removed from the agenda. I am so sorry. Jonathan was our last item. All right, we do move to our board appointments this evening, and we do have several to make. And the first is to reappoint Martin Moore to serve on the MSD board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Ball. Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Martin abstains, correct. All right, congratulations. Vice Chair Moore, you are reappointed for a 3-year term. All right, we also have an appointment for the Mountain Community Capital Fund Operating Committee, and we have one appointment and one recommendation of E.B. Otterstall from our staff. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Wells, Vice Chair Moore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, EB has been appointed to that committee. We have a Land Conservation Advisory Board for appointments and for recommendations. Do I have a motion? That's how I would do it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ball. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, those have been approved. And then our Pedestrian Plan Steering Committee, this is an ad hoc committee. It's a 5-year term, and these are the the recommendations that have been brought forward to us.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'll make the recommendation to appoint staff's recommendation, but if you don't mind, I'll read their names. I feel like they
Yes, please.
earned it.
I think so too.
Gailarna Ashari, Molly Coffey, Caitlin Constantine, Scott Dickens, Jennifer Driesbach, Julie Judkins, Megan McCreary, Bridget O'Keen, Christopher Reese, Kara Wheeler, Billy Breeden, Harry Buckner, Lucy Crown, James Eller, Shannon Touch. Those are the staff recommended names, and I will make the motion to appoint them.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations. That is a great group of volunteers and staff, and we appreciate the staff. And William, thank you for leading that effort. We look forward to the work of the steering committee.
And Madam Chair, I just want to note, we had a lot of folks apply for that. And
We
so
did.
I just
Yeah.
want to thank everyone who put their name forward, encourage folks to continue to find ways to be involved. And I'm sure staff had really difficult decision making those recommendations, but if there's any way we could find out why this certain steering committee had so many applications, I think we could learn from that, because that was a really long and impressive group.
That's a great point. And also to that point, we do have several vacancies on other boards and commissions. If you go to the county commissioner's website, boards and commissions link, you will see all the active open vacancies, and hopefully some of these folks will apply. I think there's people here this evening looking to learn more about that. We'll look forward to seeing your all's applications and names come through. There's a lot of opportunities. There's something for everyone. All right, commissioners, are there any board updates from the boards and commissions that you serve on? All right, there are none. I think we're in December mode. All right, our December 16th meetings, our 3 p.m. briefing and 5 p.m. Board of Commissioners meetings have been canceled. Our next meeting is January 6th, 2026. Kurt, do we have any closed session business this evening?
Or we do not.
All right, thank you. All right, commissioners, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Horton. All in favor? We're adjourned. All right. Enjoy December.